Hey folks, welcome back. Those who have supported the other parts, part Bling, part 1 and 2, thank you so much. And here is part 3. But let me give you a little recap to refresh your mind or your memory on where we left off. It was chapter 12, and they were talking about Vanessa, who is Lamont's, I guess, sister-in-law. I don't even know who's related to who, but I believe it's Alonzo, Vanessa's husband, who is Lamont's brother or brother-in-law. But anyway, we left off on Vanessa, and Vanessa is like, she's a ex-model who's getting older or advancing in years, but from what they're describing, she's still beautiful, she's still in shape, she has a son, and she's not really a mother. She didn't get into this relationship with Alonzo, to me, to be a wife. She got into the relationship with him to be taken care of, and then I guess having a child was like extra insurance. I mean, that's what I ascertained. But anyway, that's what we left off of. Her getting ready to go to some event. Vanessa was getting ready with her friend to go to an event, and before they left out of her home to go to the event, her and her friend Mustafa did a few lines, and if you know, you know. Okay, let's go into chapter 13. Take it off, Nessa, Witchy shouted. It was 1 a.m. and heaven was fire hazard crowded. DJ Billy, a real then Japanese with long multicolored pseudo dreads, was spinning. People didn't really dance at heaven. There was no actual dance floor. The chosen few who made it inside just sat in their seats and bounced, waving their hairs in the air or shouting out song lyrics. Sometimes, usually very late in the evening, an intoxicated girl would climb up on a table and gyrate clumsily. Tonight, Vanessa de la Cruz was that girl, with each off balance, shimmy the straps of her silk and late camisole slip further down her sweaty shoulders. MC Grimy, TLE's 27-year-old star, arrived. Lamont had asked him to stop by after his session at a nearby recording studio so they could have a meeting about his still untitled 6th album. Grimy felt more comfortable in his Bronx neighborhood than in the midst of an A-list madness. He was anxious to get back to his regular habitat, which was sitting in his Escalade, lost in a fog of chocolate tie. After peeping the overly trendy crowd out front, 4 members of his posse, the Dirty Dozen who were riding with him, decided they'd be better off blazing in a truck. A known celebrity, Grimy had no problem getting through. There were actually pearly gates outside the club. A woman wearing angel wings who was sitting on a high stool with the godlike power to admit or deny entrance to all who approached. "Where's money at?" Grimy asked, taking a seat with Lamont's crew at their banquet. Intently watching Vanessa's performance, no one answered. A minimalist compared to his hip-hop colleagues, Grimy wore no diamonds, eschewed flashy labels, and kept his hair buzzed tight, always dressy, entirely in black as he was tonight. Jeans, logo-less hooded sweatshirts, and work boots. He appeared to be in a perpetual state of mourning, in a way he was. He had 2 tattoos, a black teardrop under his eye, or under each eye. One was in honor of his late suicidal mother, the other for his brother, a hemophiliac who survived numerous hospital stays only to be stabbed on the street, where he bled to death within minutes. Grimy got his record deal a month later. Did y'all get that? Or am I reading too much in it? Let's say this again. In a way, okay, she was saying that he was always wearing black. In a way, he was, like she said, like he was mourning, right? He was always wearing black, like he was always in a perpetual state of mourning. He had 2 tattoos, a black teardrop under each eye. One was in honor of his mother who unalived herself. The other for his brother who was a hemophiliac who survived numerous hospital stays only to be stabbed on the street, where he bled out within minutes. Grimy got his record deal a month later. Okay, let's go on. Grimy had spent his formative years in and out of jail for small-time crack dealing. He told interviewers when he actually showed up to do press and felt like answering their silly questions, that the time he spent lyrically battling other inmates in the joint had helped him sharpen his rhyming skills. Lot of talented mofos in there, he say, just fell short. A ruffian of the first order, albeit one with a 140 IQ, he regarded studio gangsters, including his label mate Floss, with more pity than contempt. A lot of ends in this industry, and I ain't naming no names, get caught up trying to be something they ain't just to sell records. Lamont's thug genius had told Rolling Stone, I don't do that. I'm a rapper, not an actor. I never knew my father. My mother unalived herself when I was 15. My brother got killed a few years later. My reality is gritty enough. I've done wrong in my life, selling drugs, because people told me that was all I could do. I've been locked up in a real prison, so don't send me no video treatment where you got me rapping in a jail cell. There's nothing glamorous about that. I got a second chance, so don't take me back there, not even to pretend. I don't need to pretend. I don't need to romanticize ish. Everybody's worried about going platinum, being better, hotter, richer than the next man. But when you're number one, ain't nowhere to go but down. I don't sweat the charts, and I don't check sales figures. If you want to buy my ish, cool. If not, don't worry about it. I'm going to be all right. Mustafa was pulling Vanessa down from her makeshift stage when Lamont returned and spotted his multi-platinum seller. He approached wearing a proud smile, arms spread wide, and bellowed, "My thug genius!" DJ Billy spotted Grimy and threw on butt shocks. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Buck shots. The hit from his second album that included a chorus of nothing but gunshots. The bullet-popping intro startled a few of the older club goers not familiar with the record. Nate, Lamont's buddy and lawyer, gleefully noticed some of them almost die for cover. "Where you been?" Daryl asked as Lamont slid down next to Grimy. "You missed Vanessa's little show. Thought we was going to get a titty flash." It didn't surprise Lamont. His sister-in-law was a wild thing, and her attention-seeking stunts never stopped. Alonzo needed to kick her ass. He made a mental note to tell Zoe that. At any rate, her titties were old news. He's seen them poolside, peeking out of flimsy tops during runway shows in Europe magazines, etc. He'd go over and make his disapproval known to her in a minute. Right now, he had a story to tell. "Titty flash," Lamont said, a devilish grin forming. "I got more than that in the bathroom." Nothing more specific needed to be said. Lamont was known to be an ardent fan of a blowjob. Terribly germ-phobic. He wouldn't have unprotected intercourse with a woman until he sent her to his own doctor for an HIV test. Blowjobs were a way to immediately satisfy his carnal cravings with only a quick spot check of the mouth area to rule out any visible sores. Wow. Okay. I don't know to commend him. I don't know if I should commend him or be like, oh, okay. You gonna check and see if she don't have any mouth sores around her mouth, but you know. What if it's just not visible that day? Okay, let's go on. Since his sexual predilections were well known on the party circuit, women who enjoyed giving such pleasures often approached him out of nowhere. Who knew there was so many? Which he said, who from? They all immediately began scanning the room. Her, Lamont said, nodding toward an attractive woman in her early 30s who was making her way through the crowd with a pink top. Grimey's eyes canvassed the room. Whether performing or hanging with his boogie down Bronx dogs, Grimey's ruggedly handsome face usually took on one of three expressions: rage, disinterest, or temporary weed-induced calm. Unless performing, he spoke in a flat monotone, as though backing his words with any emotion was an arduous task he was not up to. But when he located the woman in question, his eyes flashed and he nearly shrieked, "That old B?" She was waiting outside the bathroom when I came out, Lamont said. The guys all huddled around to hear the details over the thump of the music. I've met her before. Amy, I think her name is. She pushed me back in, locked the door. She just pulled my ish out, never said a word. Did she swallow? Which he begged to know, worshipful of Lamont's brazenness and wondering why things like this never happened to him. Yes, Lamont happily confirmed. Yes, she did. So, Grimey inquired hesitantly, you F with white bitches? What is wrong with this Ian? Lamont groaned, throwing his hands up in mock exasperation. Grimey, you're a rap star. You never F a white B? Grimey stared at him blankly. Not even a D-suck. Not even a D-suck? Grimey shook his head. Nah, I don't get down like that. Grimey, Lamont moaned dramatically. You got to get out more, nigga. Try new things. A low chuckle rumbled around the table. Grimey, you're kidding me, right? Grimey shook his head. But you've been all over the world on tour, Lamont yelled, trying to understand how this could have happened. You've been to London, Germany, Japan? Grimey shrugged. Are you telling me, Lamont smirked, that you go to all these countries and do not sample their cuisine? Wherever I'm at, they find me the black chicks, Grimey explained, of his posse's international system of rounding up girls for his pleasure. Lamont squinted at him. What are you? Prejudice? Grimey almost grinned. Feeling right at home as the center of attention, Lamont continued to milk this riff for the crew's amusement. I was with you in Japan, nigga, he pressed, lasping into full-on ebonics because his bit would sound funnier that way. Ain't no black itches over there. Not unless they was on vacation and those cute little Japanese honeys were hopping around you like you was a museum piece. All you had to do was sit there and let one of them hop on your D. You didn't get none of that? Did you? Grimey wondered. Lamont gaped at him with widened eyes, pretending to take offense, and slipped back into urban, sophisticated mode. I'm an international effing playboy, money. Of course I got some. You get one with real long hair, it feels like silk. They brush it all over you. Their skin's all soft. I'm talking totally hairless, man. They are so tiny you could just flip them every which way. Lamont paused to add a visible shiver for excitement for effect. It's the ish. Everyone cracked up except Grimey, who turned up his nose unimpressed. I don't like sushi. That made everyone howl, but it was Lamont's instant comeback that slayed them. How would you know, Ian? You ain't never tried it. The women are the actual food, Nate chimed in. Grimey's that Ian that goes to Japan and eats lunch and dinner at McDonald's every day. Grimey confirmed this conjecture with a nod and added, breakfast too. You've been around the world 3 times. Lamont said, shaking his head. But you are one local MF. Seriously, kid, you need to educate your palate in more ways than one. Grimy looked lost. Educate his what? He leaned back into the booth as a flamboyantly dressed man pranced by, as if the outfit itself was contagious. Lamont threw his arm around Grimy's shoulder and pulled him in closer. You want to know the best thing about all these white women in here? Lamont scanned the room and crackled at the punchline before he even delivered it. None of them want to marry us. A spontaneous burst of laughter rang out from the table. They might want Ivy League Nathaniel with his lawyer ass, but they don't want any hip-hop ends like us, Lamont said, conveniently grouping himself as a college graduate who had been raised in a stable two-parent home into the same demographic as Grimy, a fatherless child raised on welfare who received his high school equivalency in a juvenile lockdown facility. Lamont yoked Grimy around the neck, then released him. I mean, I could pick any one of these white girls in here and decide to make her my girlfriend. He snapped his stubby fingers and waved dismissively. Send her flowers, take her out, buy her expensive-ish, play the game. But if I really did love her and wanted to marry her, you think she would? She would if she was some broad who didn't have ish, because I might be an N, but Lamont grinned and tapped his chest proudly. I'm a rich entrepreneurial nigga. You feel me? Preach, Nate joked before going over to smooths with some industry folks. He'd heard money talk this BS before, so at Witchy and Daryl, who were now trying to molest a girl who passed by the table wearing a metallic tube top. But Grimy cocked his head all ears. I mean, Grimy, you're famous, but you're still in the end from the absolute effing gutter. Grimy took that as a compliment. You're letting these suburban kids know what it's like down there. You're letting them safely experience that. That's the beauty of Grimy. Grimy basked in the praise. But you probably couldn't even marry a minimum wage white itch, Lamont howled with glee. Grimy didn't. Unless she really effing hated her parents. True, Grimy mumbled. True. But these women in here, they're educated. They have their own careers, Lamont rambled. These women can meet and marry a Wall Street guy. They all want rich men, but a rich white guy is their first choice. But they want to F us for the thrill of it. They want to go to the dark side, Lamont said, wiggling his eyebrows, and have a story to tell, or a story just to keep to themselves. He took a big gulp of water and held his fist out to Grimy. Who am I to deny them? Grimy distractedly pounded Lamont's fist with his own while his eyes wandered toward the woman in pink sitting at her table, laughing. She was sitting with two other women and a gray-haired man. Who's that guy? Grimy asked. Lamont squinted in the table's direction and watched as the woman, possibly named Amy, kissed Gustav, his partner in swirl, full on the mouth. Now he remembered where he knew her from. Gustav spotted Lamont and waved. Returning away, Lamont casually told Grimy, her husband. Grimy watched this exchange, then eyes twinkled, asked Lamont, you know him? Sort of, Lamont said. Grimy oogled the couple, thinking Lamont is the pimp of the century. So Lamont said, nudging his cash cow in the ribs to pull his attention back to important matters. How's the album coming? Wow. So, I was just, as I was reading that and seeing how, Lamont was talking about, how he dip in, transparent sauces and he don't have any problems with it, and he was trying to convince his artist to be like him, damn near plead for him to be like him, and his artist was like, well, from what he's saying, he's not interested in that. And I was told that a lot of black men are married to black women, but because society is so anti-black and anti-black woman and anti-black man, they always want to make it seem like it's such a huge division and rift within our community. But actually, it's not. You have some people like Grimy. You have some men like Grimy who, no matter what it look like, they are so cool and in love with women who look like them, and they're not interested in any other woman, you know. And then how Witchy and another guy that was with Lamont's crew was, physically molesting a young lady who walked past them. Just because a lady is dressing nicely and possibly revealing herself does not give you the license to attack her, molest her. She has that right to invite you to touch her. And it just made me think about this Diddy case and all the allegations against him, and what we keep saying, that this has been going on for a long time in the industry. It's not just Diddy. So let's go on. Chapter 14, Miss Jackson. Vernetta Lee Jackson took a seat in the cozy breakfast nook of her apartment on the 23rd floor of the Trump International Tower on Central Park West. As she sipped her Earl Grey tea, she wondered what she was going to do about her two boys. One was married, the other needed to be. Both were problems. She looked at the grandfather clock in her exquisitely furnished living room. It was 11:30. Vanessa was half an hour late and she had not called. Unbelievably rude. Mama Jackson had called a meeting with her daughter-in-law so they could discuss schools for her grandson, PJ. She'd already got materials from the best day schools in the city because she knew Vanessa, who was probably at home, still in bed, sleeping off a late night, wouldn't bother. Alonzo, Vanessa's husband, was 34 and Lamont Jr. was almost 39, but they were still boys to her, and they've always would be. Whenever she heard other parents say they loved their children the same, she wondered if they were being truthful or just saying what needed to be said. Mama Jackson has said the same thing many times to herself, but she wasn't being truthful. She played favorites, but kept it to herself. It wasn't just that Lamont was her first. He was bright and funny as a baby walking at 9 months. Alonzo was still crawling on his first birthday. Okay, so Alonzo and Lamont are brothers. And talking a few months later, it took Alonzo so long to utter a word she feared he might be retarded. Lamont's second word after mama, of course, was gimme. Mama Jackson thought of that now and laughed to herself. Gimme should have been his middle name instead of Lavelle. That inborn desire to possess things had served him well. He was bagging groceries at Key Food on weekends, making $40 pocket change by the age of 10. He always knew how to get his hustle on. He was a good student and kept out of trouble, which took good negotiating skills living in Bed-Stuy, but he was also a big kid who didn't allow anyone to push him around. She wished she could have given her kids everything, but it was a financial impossibility. Her husband was always spending what little extra income they had on card games and the like. But Lamont Sr. was a decent man and he came home to her every night, which was a lot more than some women could say. She had put herself through nursing school at night while working at a hospital morgue during the day. She just had done clerical work, but the aura of death had gotten to her. After a while, she wanted to move upstairs where people still had a chance at life. No one in her family had ever gone on to higher education. Getting her nursing degree had been the biggest achievement of her life after giving birth to her boys. But she wanted more for her children. She hoped she'd be able to send them to prestigious colleges so they could realize their dreams. She'd gotten Lamont information on the best private schools and hoped he could get some student loans, but he decided to go to City College and save her the worry. He was always so thoughtful like that. Now look at him. Lamont had become a success far and above anything she had ever dreamed of. Knowing his love for money, she had hoped he might become a banker or an accountant, a suit and tie nigga. That would have put her over the moon. When he had told her he was going to pursue a career in the music industry, she was now ashamed to admit she didn't have much faith that he could succeed. But she prayed on it. He threw parties during college, but she figured that was just a temporary way to make money. She considered starting a hip-hop label a risky proposition. Whoever thought of owning something, being his own boss and all that? But if anyone could do it, Lamont could. He made some missteps in the beginning, but she encouraged him to stay the course. Baby, you'll be the next Berry Gordy, she reassured him when he doubted himself. And that's just what he had become, the hip-hop Berry Gordy, and an Armani suit and tie nigga. God was good. Yes, he was. Lamont had told her she could quit working at the hospital once he incorporated Triple Large. She didn't mind the hospital, although she never went to P. Diddy Labor Day all-white parties in the Hamptons because it reminded her too much of the life she left behind. But after working on her feet for over... How did we jump from her saying she don't mind working in the hospital to saying she never went to P. Diddy's parties in the Hamptons? I don't get that. But after working on her feet for over 25 years, she'd often get shooting pains up and down her legs. Lamont took care of that too. He found her the best reflexologist in the city. Sure enough, that wonderful man soothed away all the pains. Thank goodness her ex-husband was too old and infirm to spend Lamont's money, or he'd be in Vegas right now hollering, "Let it ride." But then they had Alonzo to carry on that legacy. Mama gazed out the window at the treetops of Central Park and shook her head in disgust. While she had to admit that Lamont had looked like a brown gerbil as a baby, Alonzo could have been on the side of the pamper box. He was so cute. She wanted to get Alonzo into that, doing modeling or commercials when he was younger, but she didn't have the time and wouldn't have known where to start even if she did. She said Lamont looked like a gremlin. She didn't say gremlin, but that's what she meant. That's crazy. And where have those good looks gotten Alonzo, she wondered sadly. Lamont had taken care of his baby brother, and Alonzo should have been a lot more grateful than he was. After squeaking through high school, being fired from several low-wage jobs, getting arrested twice for drug possession, no convictions, praise Jesus, and 4 DUIs, which got his license revoked, Mama was tired of bailing the boy out. But she couldn't blame him. He was feeble-minded and completely unfocused, not in any way mean-spirited or harmful. He was a failure. Her failure, she felt. At some point, she had stopped hoping that Alonzo would turn over a new leaf and focus on something besides partying and gambling. He was still running all the time to Vegas or the nearest casino. He thought she didn't know, but she just thanked Jesus Christ, her Lord and Savior, that he wasn't dead or in jail. Now Alonzo was married to this hot tamale who ran through his money as quickly as a woman walking barefoot over hot coals. Not a shocker, they had eloped. Mama would have been there to raise her hand when it was time for objections to be made known. But Vanessa had trapped him. Mama hadn't even believed the girl was pregnant until she started showing. To Mama's great annoyance, Vanessa looked ravishing even in her 9 month. No swollen feet or face, just a perfect little bulge at the center of her perfect little body. Mama hadn't liked Vanessa from the word go. It was clear that Vanessa didn't care for regular black people, just the really good looking, rich, or famous members of the race. Lamont and Alonzo passed mustard, but get her around some folks, and she looked as if she were about to break out in hives. In Mama's hood, blacks and Latinos were peacefully coexisting tribes. Apparently things went down differently in Venezuela. But it was after showing newborn Pedro off at the hospital, saying over and over with obvious relief, "He's so light, he's so light," that Vanessa had zoomed to the top of Mama's ish list. A creamy, dark chocolate woman. Vernetta Lee Jackson never let anyone run that light-skinned, dark-skinned nonsense on her. A Mama Jackson truism: let one person make you feel like less, and that's how the next person will treat you. Vernetta was never a truly beautiful woman, but she'd always carried herself as if she were. The truth was, she looked better now than she ever had. Pilates had toned her full figure, and regular oxygen facials kept her skin supple and nearly unlined. It was a point of pride with her that she never had plastic surgery, so she freely owed up to her real age of 64 and always reminded folks, black don't crack, when they commented on her youthful appearance. Her appearance was something she'd always kept up. Even when she had only a few dollars to spare, she bought discount at Loman's, painted her own nails and toes, and had her hair pressed every week at Buckshot Shorty's on Gates Avenue. That was back in the day. It had taken her a minute to get into the groove of spending serious money and living triple large, as she liked to joke, but she found her footing. Now she shopped at Galleries Lafayette in Paris and Bergendorf when she was in New York. Had a standing Monday appointment at Georgetta Klinger for a full day of beauty treatments and had her wigs custom made, all thanks to her darling Lamont. Mama checked the time again. Now Vanessa was 50 minutes late. The unmitigated gall, she wanted to wring that girl's neck sometimes. No, most of the time, but she sighed. As much as she disliked the uppity little hussy, Mama had to count her blessings because Vanessa had turned into a grandmama. Mama called her grandson PJ, as in Pedro Jackson, just to spite Vanessa and remind her that Jackson might not be her last name, but it was the name of her half-black son, and it would be the surname of Miss De La Cruz's grandkids one day too. And Mama had to admit that marriage had a common effect on Alonzo. He still wasn't doing much at the company, but he stopped carousing and getting into bar brawls. He loved being a father and was much better at parenting than Vanessa ever cared to be. But he let his major punk his ass on a regular. Whatever Vanessa wanted, Vanessa got. Women, that was a weak spot for both of her sons. Alonzo had already made his bed, but she could still keep Lamont from getting pickpocketed, although he was a prime target for all these money-hungry whorelots. Lamont wasn't a sucker for a pretty face like Alonzo. Attaboy, Mama would think whenever he dumped some dime a dozen bimbo who was trying to muscle in on the massive bank account that was supporting the Jackson family. Among all the here today, gone tomorrow women, Lamont had taken up with Kendra Truesdale and had been a real contender. All well-mannered girl from a middle-class family in Florida. Kendra was the ideal mate for her darling son. Lots of women knew how to make pleasant conversation, but the true gift was knowing when to shut up. Kendra was gifted that way. And unlike so many of these gals today, She wasn't so obsessed with her career as to lose sight of what was truly important, Lamont's happiness. Most important, Kendra paid Mama the respect she felt was due to her as the monarch of the Jackson Empire. Plus, she was black, mocha skin, and very shapely. Her parents had come to visit a few times when Lamont and Kendra were an item, born small town people, but they were decent, and Mama liked that. She felt a bit sorry for Harold and Pat Truesdale because they seemed to have the false impression that Kendra was a big time model actress when Mama had never seen her in a damn thing except for some rap videos. But she was trying. Mama really thought Lamont had found the one until he unceremoniously dumped the poor girl. When Mama asked why, he critically responded, "Never can tell." Kendra came to Mama for advice on getting him back soon afterward. She broke down in torrented sobs, and Mama's heart went out to her. Lamont was such a stellar catch that the pain of having him slip through her fingers must have been unbearable, Mama told her. "Absence makes the heart grow fonder, sweetheart. Don't call him, let him miss you." Sound advice, or so Mama thought, but after 8 months, Lamont didn't seem to be missing Kendra at all. She decided to ask Kendra to lunch. They were meeting today at Cipriani, Mama's favorite restaurant. She took a last sip of tea, carefully placed her teacup back on the saucer, and rose from her chair. As for no-show Vanessa, when that money vacuuming drug fiend crawled out of her hole, she was going to get the tongue lashing of her lifetime, and Vernetta Lee Jackson was going to love every minute of it. Wow. Okay. Well, now we know how Alonzo and Lamont's mom feel about Alonzo's wife. I told y'all. I told you it was just a business move for her, marrying Alonzo and having a child. Now let's go into chapter 15. Funky Fresh Dressed. Like $1,000,000. That ain't what it said. That was, fresh. I was thinking about fresh. Okay, let's go on. Like she had just rung up a bottle of shampoo at Rite Aid, the woman behind the register at Scoop said matter-of-factly, "That would be $7,275. Mimi gasped audibly. Vanessa didn't blink. She slapped Lamont's black Amex under the counter with authority. You had to be a big spender to get an Amex Centurion card. It was invitation only, a leap up from platinum. For Mimi's style makeover, the ladies had carte blanche for one day only. Vanessa had been acting like a contestant on Supermarket Sweep, racking up as much as she could for Mimi and herself in the allotted time. Per Imani's instructions, Mimi has shown up at Vanessa's Soho apartment at 11 this morning. She was shown in by a meek, broken English-speaking woman who was holding the hand of the most adorable boy she had ever seen. "Miss Vanessa comes soon," the woman told her. Mimi had assumed Lamont's sister-in-law would be black. From the looks of her son, probably not. The boy whom the nanny called Pedro grabbed at Mimi's hand as if he was desperate for a playmate and led her to his room. There was a floor-to-ceiling Lion King mural painted around all four walls. Mimi didn't mind the wait because she and cute little Pedro crawled over the rug playing with his truckload of toys. Over an hour later, Vanessa slunk into the room in an oddly glamorous look that answered the question that the average woman asked herself when flipping through Vogue. Who would buy these outrageously priced clothes and put them together in this way? Where would they go looking like this? Vanessa de la Cruz would. to go on a wild shopping spree with her rich brother-in-law's credit card. That's who. It was mild March day, so Mimi, wearing jeans and Puma, was perplexed as to why Vanessa was rocking her fall look. On her feet were what looked like Timberland work boots, but they had skinny wooden heels and pointy toes, and they were pink. Brown corduroys hung low from her narrow waist, and the shrunken hot pink turtleneck exposed her supple stomach. She had a Gucci bucket hat sitting high on her head like she didn't want to mess up her hair, and dark tin Google-sized glasses covering half her face. "I'm ready," was Vanessa's greeting. Pedro ran up to her for a hug, but she just patted him on his head instead. Mimi couldn't get a good look at her with the glasses and the hat, but there was something familiar about her. As they headed down to the Ford Expedition Imani had ordered for them, Vanessa grabbed a short olive green bomber jacket with fur trim and an enormous apple green purse. After settling in, Vanessa removed her shades and hat. Mimi recognized her instantly. It was Vanessa de la Cruz, the model. Mimi had seen her in so many magazines. She was Lamont's sister-in-law? "Wow," she gushed. I didn't recognize you at first. Everyone just said Vanessa, Lamont's sister-in-law. I didn't know they meant you." "Lamont's sister-in-law?" Vanessa repeated, offended at the secondary billing. "I always thought you were so gorgeous," Mimi said unabashedly. "Thought?" Vanessa begged her pardon. "Or think." "Oh yeah, I think you're gorgeous," Mimi corrected herself seriously. "This is so exciting." "Isn't it?" Vanessa agreed, taking a liking to Lamont's new artist instantly. Mimi wasn't sure she could emulate Vanessa's casual chic style, but she wanted to. When Mimi asked where she'd gotten all the things she was wearing, Vanessa was happy to oblige with a rundown. "Milano," she said, pointing to the boots. "Almost impossible to get, but I'll see what I can do. Pants are Cayanayo." Excuse me for saying that wrong. I'm sure I did. "Jacket by Marc Jacobs. Sunglasses Christian Dior. This sweater I got, where?" "Oh, someone sent this to me. I forget who." The bag, she says, stroking it more affectionately than she had Pedro, "is an Aramis Birkin. And the hat is Gucci," Mimi answered. It had logos all over it. She had never heard of any of those other designers except for Christian Dior. And she didn't know he made sunglasses. "I love your look. I want to get stuff like that," Mimi bubbled, without any real understanding of how much stuff like that cost. Vanessa smiled appreciatively. "Dinana, sweetie," Lamont said, "to hook you up from head to toe." Mimi had wondered if the saleswoman at Barney's, where they had gone first, was going to accept a credit card from a Spanish woman who was probably not named Lamont Jackson. But it hadn't been a problem. At Barney's, where they had lunch, at Fred's, nor at Bergendorf, Prada, Hermes, Milano, Blanc, Jimmy Choo, Chanel, Roberto Cavalli, the Nike Superstore, the Levi's store, Jeffrey Intermex, Calypso. Vanessa had coordinated their route so they would work their way downtown. Many of the salespeople knew Vanessa and appeared to be almost salivating when they saw her coming. They were helpful and she was snippy, but they all seemed to be thrilled just to be in her presence. Vanessa had once looked at a price tag. Mimi had tried on a suede coat at Prada and couldn't find the price tag, so she asked Vanessa in a whisper so the snooty hoovering saleswomen wouldn't hear. "How much is this?" Vanessa very loudly replied, "We can afford it." At the other store, she had puttered around looking at things while Vanessa settled the bills. She hadn't realized just how much they were spending until this shocking revelation at Scoop. She felt like putting some of the things back. God, that was a lot of money. Mimi was kicking herself for spending some of her own advanced money at Urban Outfitters, but how was she to know Lamont was going to buy her everything she could ever want? Jeans, coats, boots, sneakers, underwear, bags, headscarves, sunglasses, skirts, casual dresses, dressy dresses, socks. Some of the stuff was way sexy. Other things she just didn't consider her style. But Vanessa kept saying it's a must-have. Lamont was buying her all this stuff and Vanessa approved, so who was she to argue? They walked out of Scoop and Vanessa bumped into a friend headed in. "Hey, Nessa," the pretty woman said sweetly, and Vanessa greeted her in an equally pleasant tone. "Kendra, this is Mimi," Vanessa said proudly, showing off her beautiful young charge. "She's just been signed by Lamont." Kendra was pushing 30 and looked it. She was the kind of woman everyone considered pretty until an exceptionally beautiful woman, someone like Vanessa de la Cruz, walked into the room and made her pale in comparison. Needless to say, running into Kendra made Vanessa feel just fabulous. "You're a rapper?" Kendra asked, looking Mimi up and down. "No, I sing," Mimi said politely, ignoring the woman's head-to-toe evaluation. "Really?" Kendra said, processing this information. "Lamont is handling singers now?" "She's the first," Vanessa confided, "branching out and all that." "I just had lunch with Mama Jackson," Kendra volunteered, letting Vanessa know she was still somewhat in the mix. "Were you supposed to meet her today?" She knew the answer to that. Mama had bitched about it extensively. "Was I?" Vanessa asked without concern. She had completely forgotten. "I see you two really went crazy today," Kendra noted anxiously, watching the salesman carrying bag after bag out of the car. "Yes," Vanessa sighed. "We've been everywhere, so tired. Must dash." She air kissed Kendra and hopped into the car. Mimi obediently followed, forcing a smile at Kendra, who didn't return the favor. Kendra Truesdale absent-mindedly pushed clothes along the racks, annoyed by this unexpected encounter. Lamont's new singer looked very young. She had to be at least 10 years younger than Kendra, 18, and she was pretty, beautiful really, just the kind of girl Lamont would like. Kendra hated her already. Kendra once thought Vanessa might be her sister-in-law. Now Vanessa couldn't spare more than a minute to talk to her. How about a "Hey Kendra, what have you been up to?" That would have been nice, but she learned not to expect too much for Vanessa. That one was so self-involved. Maybe it was for the best that she had nags, other than the audition she got on this morning for a Kaopectate commercial where she had to say the word diarrhea twice in 6 lines of copy, in which she probably wouldn't get anyway because she never booked anything. She hadn't been up to much more than talking nasty to anonymous men on the Hot Calls phone sex line. Since her career, if you could call it that, as an actress was going exactly nowhere, she had been doing the phone sex thing. A friend of hers, another out-of-work actress, turned her on to it, and though she hated it, the money was decent. It paid for acting classes and whatnot. This inadvisable shopping jaunt fell under the category of whatnot. Before pursuing acting in earnest, Kendra had been featured in many high-profile rap music videos. Her shapely body, full natural breasts, voluptuous hips attached to an inexplicably tiny waist, and an ass that looked like an African sculpture, thick shoulder-length black hair, and dark brown skin that seemed to glow even in the winter kept her in high demand on the hip-hop video circuit. She was not the stereotypical video hoe, mind you. Those girls' jingling body parts only made the final cut. Kendra was featured face and all as the sexy love interest of Jay-Z, LL Cool J, Puff Daddy, Snoop Dogg, And Floss, to name a few, she was the main chick next to the biggest names in hip hop. They all tried to run the same lines on her, but she kept it strictly professional. Okay, she effed Nelly once, but that was all. An appearance in a Floss video was what put her on Lamont's radar. She wasn't clear on why his assistant had summoned her to his office, but it didn't take long to figure it out. He asked her where she was from, Naples, Florida, and what her dreams were to be a serious film actress, and what her favorite movie was, Pretty Woman. He told her he was intrigued by her. He said she has something special. He told her she could do a lot more than sit next to some rap star and look pretty. Then he suggested they have dinner sometime and took her phone number. She waited for him to call for over 3 weeks. She thought about calling his office. She hadn't gotten his personal numbers, but decided against it. When he rang, it made her happier than she had been in a long time, even though she didn't think he was all that cute. But he had a way about him that made her palms sweaty. It was definitely the power thing. After they slept together once, he asked her to take an HIV test at his doctor's office because he hated rubbers. What the oh my God. It offended her. Did he think because she slept with him after only 3 dates and she had appeared in rap videos that she was some kind of slut? But then he said, all cool and collected, hey, if you don't want to, don't. And she sensed an implied threat, like he had another girl on speed dial who'd run right over with her test results in hand if she didn't. She had the test the next day. When it came back negative, Lamont gave her his verbal assurance that he was clean. They started doing all kinds of freaky things in bed. So she had to go prove that she didn't have HIV, but he didn't have to show. Okay. And then you let this dude run through you with no rubber like y'all married. I be telling y'all women, y'all be giving up a whole lot. Okay, let's go on. 2 weeks into the relationship, he told her the video thing was tacky and said she'd have to move on from that. Lamont almost never made suggestions. He made commands. He got her an agent to set her up for commercial and film auditions, which Kendra felt was a great big step toward her goal of becoming the next Vivica A. Fox. She and Lamont were together for 2 years, the longest relationship Kendra had ever had. He laced her with money and the hottest clothes. They went on trips to Maui, St. Bart's, St. Tropez. They took weekend trips to Miami or Atlanta for A-list industry parties. Everything first class. Being Lamont's official honey gave her status. When she ran into rappers whose videos she appeared in, they treated her with more respect. She'd even had her picture on New York Magazine's party page taken at a charity benefit she'd gone to with Lamont, although they didn't list her name in the caption. They called her a friend. Everything seemed to be moving along perfectly. Before Lamont, she was always hustling to get her next job to pay the bills, dating guys she liked but didn't love, and prone to bouts of depression. During the Lamont phase, she still wasn't working much, but at least she was getting better auditions. She just loved that man to death, and the lifestyle wasn't too hard to love either. It was the happiest she had ever been in her entire life. Then he dumped her. Wham bam, and that was it. She never saw it coming. So, Kendra's a friend of yours? Mimi asked as the driver made his way to the Molly Mills store. Not really, Vanessa said lightly. When Vanessa opened her mouth, it was hard to tell if she was going to speak or yawn. You don't like her? She's Lamont's ex, Vanessa reluctantly revealed. One day Lamont was all into Kendra, and the next day she was gone. Vanessa had never gotten the full story, nor did she particularly care. She learned to keep out of Lamont's business. Staying on his good side meant she got little treats like today. She wasn't very friendly, Mimi pressed. She was nice enough, Vanessa said cautiously. To you, everyone is. To my face, Vanessa said bluntly. She had no close girlfriends. They all became catty sooner or later. Sweetie, you have to understand that everyone wants Lamont's attention. Now that you're his pet project, you're getting more attention than anyone. Pet project? Mimi did not like the sound of that. You know what I mean, Vanessa said, tiring of the conversation. He's putting a lot of energy into launching your career. People can get jealous. So Kendra is jealous of me just because I'm signed to the label? Mimi asked, trying to understand. He's like my boss. Yes, but you're pretty and you're a female, and she's jealous of that. I'm sure I heard she was devastated when he dumped her. She wouldn't even leave her apartment for weeks. Vanessa pushed a lock of hair behind her ear. If I was fat as her, I'd be depressed too. God, that was terrible. After a beat during which Mimi wondered if they were still talking about the same person, she said, she's not fat. She has fat aura. Vanessa said, it's only a matter of time. God, these people are so shallow. Whew. Mimi caught herself staring at Vanessa, and she was about to turn away because she was rude, but Vanessa just sat there comfortably looking straight ahead. She was obviously a person who had grown accustomed to being stared at and enjoyed it. All day Mimi had marveled at how perfect Vanessa's skin was. Did she have to go to a dermatologist and get those pills like Mimi had been getting? Vanessa's hair was so shiny and bouncy, and every time they went into a different store, the lighting would pick up all the different shades of brown woven in the long strands. Was that natural? In profile, Vanessa's nose had the perfect slope, and Mimi could see how far her eyelashes fanned out. And whenever Vanessa walked by, she'd get a sweet whiff of her perfume. After being out all day, she could still smell the scent. It never faded. Now sitting 10 inches away from Vanessa, Mimi felt like she was looking at an airbrushed picture of her in a magazine, and somewhere within the magazine a perfume strip was open. But Vanessa was so bitchy to everyone she had encountered that Mimi wondered if maybe she had PMS or something. Mimi assumed the only reason she had been spared was because she had come with Lamont's stamp of approval, or maybe Vanessa actually did like her. Vanessa was gorgeous, rich, and had everything anyone could ask for, including an adorable, healthy baby. What on earth does she have to be so cranky about? Mimi wondered. Like that mean comment about Kendra. Was that her way of being funny? But then Mimi smiled, having a delayed reaction to the fact that Vanessa had called her pretty. Lamont thought she had star quality, and Vanessa de la Cruz, Miss Perfection, thought she was pretty. Life wasn't so bad. So why Lamont dumped Kendra? Mimi asked. Who knows? Vanessa replied as the car pulled up to Malia Mill Shop. This was going to be their last stop. Mimi didn't know what kind of store it was until they walked in, and she saw it was filled with bathing suits. What a sweetheart Lamont is turning out to be, she thought. Hooking me up with Lena, having me styled by Vanessa de la Cruz, buying me all this stuff. Vanessa held up a brightly stripped bikini and noted her approval. Cute. Picking up on Vanessa's mantra of the day, Mimi jokingly agreed, it's a must-have. I can kind of see where this is going. I think Vanessa... No, not Vanessa. I think Mimi is going to get her heart broken thinking that Vanessa's going to be somebody she can rely on. Or it might, might be a little twist. But not, Vanessa might let her, human softer side come out. She might end up liking Mimi. And I hope Mimi retains that innocence about her, grounded innocence about herself. Because she is going up there like a deer caught in headlights. And I note to people, anyone who's looking to get into Hollywood, do not ever walk into that industry looking like a deer caught in headlights, because they will eat you alive. You better go in there walking like you always been a part of it, and not in the, vulgar, disturbing, perverted way. But act like being around people like that, whether they're famous or rich, and in the background you don't act like you ain't new to that. You act like, hey, I always been here, y'all just didn't know me. That's how kind of attitude you have, and you have that in every aspect of your life. You had that attitude, and it's not a nasty, like, kiss my butt arrogant attitude. It's confidence. That's what people like. It doesn't matter how you look. Doesn't matter your body style. Doesn't matter what clothes you rock. If you walk in with confidence, people will be drawn to you like bees to honey. Okay, now let's go into chapter 16. Killing Me Softly. Mimi had never been a big fan of hip hop. That was the funny part. She knew the bigger names, had heard songs on the radio, and seen videos on MTV, of course. The music was inescapable. But she wasn't totally up on it. Hanging out with Lena changed all that. Hip hop was played at all the parties they've been going to, and Lena religiously listened to the Funk Master Flex radio mix show. On the rare occasions that Lena drove her Range Rover, she cranked whatever rap CD she purchased that week or mix CD of hip-hop favorites that she burned. Usually, they took car services in which Lena would make the driver tune to Blazing 104, which played mostly hip-hop and R&B songs that had hip-hop remixes. The music was the bass-heavy, expletive field soundtrack of Lena's life, but Mimi didn't mind the overload. She was turning into a hip-hop head, though unlike Lena, she didn't know every single word to every single song. Now here she was at Grove Street Studios about to sing the hook on a record with Super Fat E. Lena had her listening to various rap song collabs all week like she was in training for a prize fight. Fat E was one of Lena's favorites. You're lucky to get down with him, Lena had gushed. Everything he touches turns platinum. His flow is just bananas. Ivan, the studio engineer, poked his head into Studio A. You still in here? Ivan waved for her to follow him, and she did. He opened the door to Studio B, and there was Daryl, sitting at the mixing board with a song playing at an ear-shattering level. Fatty said he'd be here by 9, Ivan said, and disappeared. Sup, girl, Daryl said, lowering the volume a smidget. You've been in here all this time? I've been waiting for an hour in the other room. Yeah, he said, not looking up from the mixing board. I was just about to slide up in there, just finishing up this other song. He handed her a yellow piece of lined paper with some words scribbled on it. Your lyrics. Mimi looked at the chorus. It was 5 lines. The first, Gucci, Prada, Dolce Gabbana. The last, I want to be your fly ass bitch. She couldn't make out the other 3 lines. Daryl's handwriting was so bad. It didn't matter what they said because she didn't like that last line at all. I want to be your fly ass bitch. You actually want me to say that? I guess so, Daryl answered crisply. I wrote it. He snatched the page back saying, we might change it depending on Fatty's part. The ink was barely dry on her contract, but Daryl had already cultivated a strong dislike for her. His reasons were threefold. For one, she was a performer who'd eventually enjoy more attention than he ever would as a behind the scene producer. Secondly, she was poised to become Lamont's newest darling. Lastly, and most gravely, Mimi was tall and pretty. Too tall and too pretty. He couldn't front. She was a true dime piece. Just the kind of hottie who would never give him any PUSSY under any circumstances. Altogether, these observations made Daryl so mad he felt like karate chopping a wooden block in one forceful blow. But in the studio, he was the boss. On that point, they needed to be clear. Following Daryl into Studio A, Mimi wondered why everything he said sounded like a threat. These lyrics were awful, but trying to press the issue would only anger him further. If Lena were here, she'd no doubt be saying how hot these lyrics were. The other songs they listened to had lines like that. She'd just have to cooperate and do her best. Anyway, it wasn't her song. It was Super Fat E's. And it wasn't going on her album. It was for his soundtrack. Her album was going to be completely different. That's why she should have read that contract before she signed it. Let's carry on. As soon as Daryl settled in, she nervously pulled out her songbook and showed it to him. "You wrote all this?" Daryl asked, noticing that all the pages were filled. "Yeah," Mimi said, teetering on the edge of the couch. "I have 5 other books, but I recopied my favorites into this one." Swiveling back and forth in the chair in front of the mixing board, Daryl skimmed the lyrics for the first song. Like a dream, corny. He turned to the next page and checked out Soul Cry, cornier. He read the chorus of On the Inside and without looking at another page decided it was the corniest of all the songs she written. "You trying to be the black Celine Dion or something?" "No," Mimi snapped, wanting to grab the book back. "Are those songs you want to record for your album?" Daryl asked, using his long pinky nail to satisfy an itch between his cornrows. "Or are you just showing me these 'cause you want me to know you right?" "A little of both," Mimi said hesitantly. He obviously didn't like the songs. "I don't have to record those, but I definitely want to be a part of the writing process. You know, I want to be sort of like Lauryn Hill or Erykah Badu." "Really?" Daryl said contemptuously, trying not to let his face register surprise at this ridiculous bit of information. If he were a real asshole, he would have given voice to his first reaction, which was, "Itch, you ain't no Lauryn Hill, and you ain't never gonna be. Not on this label." If he were committed to his A&R job, he would have done his duty and diplomatically explained that the label had some slightly different ideas about what kind of artist she should be, which was more radio ready, supremely cross-marketable J-Lo, and less soul-searching, average-selling Erykah Badu. He thought Lamont had gone over that with her, but what would Daryl know? Lamont never told him anything. Instead, he gave her a vague, "Well, we'll see," and turned his back on her and got back into his music. Around 9, Ivan walked in and jovially announced, "Super Fat E in the house." As Super Fat E bounced through the narrow studio doors, the literal meaning of his name became instantly clear. Super Fatty. Mimi realized her mouth was hanging open, so she quickly shut it. She knew he was on the big side, but damn, in person, he was stupendously large. He had to be over 300 pounds, well over. He was wearing a plain white cotton undershirt that could have been used as a hammock for newborn triples. Yellow sweatpants with white piping hung below his insanely bloated belly, and his plump dimple fist clutched a matching yellow jacket. Bouncing off his midsection at the end of a thick platinum chain was an enormous diamond E designed in such a jagged script it looked like the work of Zorro. The combination of the yellow sweatpants fat form naturally the jeweled initial bigger than the head of an average young child, and his crackling kinetic energy made him seem like a cross between Big Bird and Superman. The only small things on Fat E were his feet. What's poppin', y'all? Was Fat E's exultant greeting. It felt like a whoosh of pure oxygen followed him into the room. Fat E crowed Daryl, standing up from the board to give him the customary b-boy salute. They clasped hands, curled their bodies toward each other, and tapped shoulders, using their free hands to tap the other's back. Daryl was so small and Fat E so large, it looked like Daryl might disappear into Fat E's embrace, never to be seen again. Country D, Fatty said, how you? Hype, playboy, Daryl said, ready to blaze this record. Mimi couldn't stop staring as he and Daryl ribbed each other. She stood up and waited to be introduced. Daryl started up the music, obviously with no intention of introducing them, so Fatty took it upon himself. Ernesto Moore, he said gallantly. He took her hand and theatrically kissed it. You must be Mimi. Nice to meet you. He sank and sank and sank into the sofa and patted the small remaining space next to him. Mimi took a seat and Fatty immediately swooped his arm around her. So, this your first record? Yeah, she said. And I'm really excited because I hear everything you touch turns platinum. Believe what you heard. I love your flow, Mimi added. It's bananas. Ah, Fat E swooned, soaking up the compliments. That's right. Just stick with me, baby. Can I see your rap part of the song? Sure, Fatty said. Soon as I write it. He looked up as Ivan strolled back into the room carrying a plastic folder. A wiry, shaggy-haired white guy, Ivan considered hip-hop a creative and powerful art form, and after working with all the big-name hip-hop artists, he no longer got a headache from breathing in marijuana fumes. He tossed the folder onto Fatty's lap. Fatty thanked Ivan, then turned to Mimi and said, now that we're all cozy-ish, let's order. Mimi looked over at the folder. Inside its transparent cover was a white sheet of paper that read, menus for Super Fatty, please do not touch. Ivan had done that. People were always misplacing the menus, and a good selection of varying cuisines that could be delivered in a timely fashion was the only real request Fatty had when he came to the studio. After mulling over several types of food, Fatty decided it was seafood night and put in an order for two since Daryl and Ivan declined to join them for dinner. After close inspection, Mimi decided Ernesto was rather cute. He had smooth, clear skin, the color of wet sand, short, tightly curled brown hair, and a sparse, elegantly sculpted goatee. She hoped he hadn't noticed her recoil slightly at his girth when he entered the room. Hey, Ivan, Fatty said, throw me the pad. Magic Mike, baby, Ivan said as he tossed Fatty his tools, a fresh yellow legal pad and a number 2 pencil, brand new, just sharpened. Like Copperfield, Fatty replied. His first top 10 hit had been written this way, and ever since he superstitiously followed the same routine to the letter. Within minutes, Fat E was completely lost in his rhyme writing. He was well respected by music critics as a true poet who wove intricate rhymes about the plight of the young urban male, only God can judge, and on which he ruminated about growing up as a fat kid from his second album, Food is Love, was considered to be his finest work to date. But like most hip-hop artists, he found a way for art and commerce to profitably coexist. He was concerned with selling records, and he knew people, especially the young kids who were his core audience, wanted to party more than they wanted to ponder. Gotta pay the bills, he chirped when he came into a studio as a hired gun to guest star on another artist's album. That's what he was doing tonight. Triple Large was releasing the good-looking soundtrack, and they were paying the Hits Inc. superstar his going rate of $150,000 per song to take part. Even if almost no one saw the movie, a soundtrack would sell briskly if it featured hot songs from a variety of well known rappers, and Fat E was the biggest in every sense. An hour later, the receptionist buzzed over the intercom. Dinner time, she trilled. The food had an intoxicating effect on Fat E. The more he devoured, he moved from lobster to crab legs to a baked potato dripping with sour cream with the dexterity of a DJ. The giddier and more talkative he became. Even though he rapped about his slick girl getting abilities and his sexual prowess with such tricks, he admitted the ladies' man status was just part of his rap star image. His devoted wife, Renee, his angel, was the only woman he ever went home to. She loved him before the fame and riches at Benjamin Franklin High. She was proud to walk the halls with her overweight Ernesto, even though he had ballooned to 280 pounds by the senior prom. She wants to have a baby, he said, but I can't even knock her up. Something wrong with my sperm, he shrugged. We're going to a fertility doctor and everything. Keep trying, Fat, Mimi said supportively. She thinks it has to do with my weight. The doctor said it doesn't, he insisted, but she wants me to go on a diet anyway. She's worried about me getting so big. She tries to feed me all this low-calorie food, You know what she taped on the fridge? He paused and cocked his head. This article with a big headline that says obesity kills. How effed up is that? Mimi smiled sympathetically. He sighed. I know she's probably right, he conceded, wiping his greasy palms with a paper towel. But gee damn, I'm super fat E. How am I going to get all skinny and still represent? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I hear you, Mimi said, feeling very comfortable with Fat E. But she only did that because she really cares. She's got your back. And that's why I love her, Fat E said. He slouched down in his chair and exhaled, having finished his seafood workout. So what about you? What about me? You got a man? Me? Nah. Yeah, well, I don't know if there are many suitable fellas in this crowd you're running with, little lady, Fatty mock lectured. Why? 'Cause ends in this industry is all about gaming. I ain't about games. I got my lady. She's been down with a nigga since times was rough. You heard? Mimi smiled, thinking, why can't I find a guy like Ernesto? But you wouldn't believe how many women throw themselves at these here swole up ends, Fatty said, thoroughly amused. Even though they know I'm married, happily married, I don't understand females sometimes. I mean, why chase the end that every other chick wants? Why sign up with that kind of stress? I'm not saying you have to be with a lazy broke mofo. But what's wrong with the average hard-working brother who will take care of you and love you right? Your wife got both, Mimi quipped. But he posed a good question. Jamal had been a star quarterback in Toledo. And wasn't that what made him so attractive? That all the other girls had wanted him and she'd had him for a while? You heard, Fatty exclaimed, jumping up from his chair. Mimi was so startled that she almost slipped off hers. He scooped her up in his arms like he was about to do curls and she was the barbell. But I'm one of a kind, baby. As she giggled, he carried her back to the studio singing, Back to Work We Go, to the beat of Chapel of Love. After laying down his lyrics, Fatty was beyond tired and wanted to jet, but he stayed to encourage Mimi as she supplied her vocal contribution. On her ninth take, after singing the lines Daryl had written, Mimi warbled some of her own creation. She'd been listening to Fat E rapping all night, and she had some complimentary lyrics rattling around in her head. As soon as Daryl heard the unfamiliar words, he cut the music. What was that? His voice sounded loud and disapproving in her headphones. I don't know, Mimi said in her most apologetic voice. It just came out that way. Get out here, Daryl shouted, and Mimi removed the headphones and walked out of the recording booth into the main studio room. Before Daryl could yell, she said, I just thought we could try it. Don't think, sing, Daryl snapped as Fatty wheezed, half asleep on the couch. Hey, Ivan, maybe you should print that up on one of your signs and put it in the booth, Daryl snickered to Ivan. Don't think, sing. You know, just a reminder. I don't like it your way, Mimi said boldly. This wasn't her song, so she probably shouldn't be trying to rewrite the lyrics. But this wasn't about the song. Daryl was trying to humiliate her. Lena's kill him with kindness strategy hadn't gotten Mimi anywhere, and she was just about sick of his jacked up attitude. Nobody asked you, Daryl said. He sat back in the chair and folded his arms, taking pleasure in reprimanding her. Mimi looked at Ivan. His expression seemed to be saying, leave it alone. But she didn't want to leave it alone. For years, she'd been singing the stupid songs Kenny wrote for them when she had a book full of her own songs. Now, Daryl had hardly even looked at the songs in her book before deeming them crap. And he had barely heard the lyrics she was trying out tonight before pulling his power play. Maybe we should ask Lamont, Mimi said without thinking. When she saw the immediate look of panic on Ivan's face, she wished she could have inhaled the words. Ivan knew that threatening to go to Lamont with any complaint about Daryl was akin to a guy telling his girlfriend, yes, those jeans do make you look fat. It was the ultimate no-no. Daryl suddenly got up and walked toward the couch where Fatty was fidgeting in his sleep. Mimi and Ivan didn't know what he was about to do. They watched him grab the phone. Want to take it straight to the top, huh? Daryl said, his usual sarcasm now sounding sinister. Good idea. You ain't never written a real song in your life, but why don't you call the boss and tell him you want to start today? He stabbed at the buttons. It's only 4 a.m. He never sleeps, and he calls me all the time at this hour. I'm sure he'd love to chat. Mimi didn't think he was really calling Lamont, was he? Right now? She only said that because she couldn't think of anything else to say. Daryl held out the receiver. It's ringing. Mimi rushed over to take the phone. She hung it up and turned to walk back to the booth and do whatever Daryl wanted. Then Fatty sprang up from the couch. What's poppin'? He yelled, pawing at his face and looking around like he didn't know where he was. That broke the tension in the room, and everyone, including Daryl, laughed. Mimi wants to rewrite the hook of your song, Daryl blurted, assuming Fat E would blow her off as a novice just as he'd done. Mimi was expecting Fat E to object as well, but to her pleasant surprise, he said, great, let's hear what you got, baby. When she went back into the booth and sang her lyrics, Fat E, now wide awake and taking up much of Daryl's former terrain at the mixing booth, complimented her through her headphones. I likes, he said. They played around with the hook for hours and wound up using a combination of Daryl's lines and hers. When they left at 8 a.m, Fat E put his arm around her, and even though she told him her apartment was within walking distance, he insisted on giving her a ride home. It's great that you can write, he told her as they strolled out to the street. That's how you make real paper. Rule number 1 in this biz, write your own songs and own your publishing. Daryl followed them out, keeping quiet. He hadn't said much since Fat E went into command mode. Fat E was a hip-hop god, one that Daryl was not prepared to challenge. Mimi climbed into Fat E's black Hummer H2 and watched the guys jovially embrace each other in farewell. But as Fat E went around to the driver's side, Daryl didn't seem to have any warm feelings left for her. Later was all Daryl said, and she saw a look in his eyes that told her there would be hell to pay for what had happened tonight, and she'd be the one footing the bill. So I wonder if Fatty is Big Punisher. And you know the industry, period. A lot of sectors in this country, around the world, is filled with Daryls. Intimidated, insecure, taking out their frustrations and frustrations with life and frustrations with their biological body, taking it out on everybody else, because she's tall and beautiful and talented. He's jealous. And then they say women are petty. It's like, why are you letting your issues interfere with business? Then they say women are too emotional to do business, but they don't think about themselves being emotional and allowing themselves to interfere with business. They can want to do business with you, but as soon as you tell them no, what happens? They allow their feelings and insecurities to interfere with business. All right, let's jump into chapter 17. Thug passion. I feel weird, Mimi said, shifting uncomfortably in the booth at Swirl. You haven't even had a drink yet, Vanessa replied, wondering where Lena was. No, down there, Mimi mumbled. Oh, your pee feels weird? Mimi's face contorted into expression of embarrassment. So what do you call it? Vanessa mused. Not that, Mimi said quietly. Sweetie, how can you love your pee if you can't even say the word? Vanessa sighed, thinking this little cheek I had a lot to learn. My P-U-S-S-Y is my best friend. I'm sure it is, Mimi said dryly. She had never thought about hers as something she should love or not love. It was just there. What do you think I should call it? Vagina? Vanessa said, precisely enunciating each syllable. Mimi tried not to smile but couldn't help it. I want you to say it, Vanessa insisted. What? You know what, Vanessa urged. It was fun to make Mimi squirm and so easy. My P-U-S-S-Y feels weird, Mimi said very quickly and very quietly. Sorry she had ever brought it up. It was your first time, Vanessa said, easily looking around to see which bold-faced names were in attendance that night. You'll get used to it. After their first meeting, when she noticed unsightly whiskers sprouting out of the bikini Mimi was trying on, Vanessa had dragged her to J Sisters for a bikini wax. Not a Brazilian, for which the J Sisters had become famous. There was even an autographed photo of Gwyneth Paltrow in the salon, on which the star had written, "Thanks for changing my life." Vanessa said she was getting a modified Brazilian, a down below baldy, which left a strip of hair visible on top. She let Mimi come into the small room to watch her getting all prettied up, after which Mimi was so aghast she refused to go next. But Vanessa browbeat her little follower into submission. Mimi screamed with pain when her hair was ripped. She was flipped over and her legs was twisted like a pretzel. She felt like she was in the throes of childbirth. Vanessa held her hand, acting like her bikini wax Lamaze coach. Now that you've gone bare, you'll never go back, Vanessa had reassured afterward. Guys love it. Now all Mimi had to do was find a guy. Please don't tell me you're a virgin, Vanessa said, thinking it was a definite possibility. Not at all, Mimi exclaimed defensively. High school boys, huh? Vanessa sniffed. Vanessa sniffed a lot. It was like an open carton of rancid milk followed her everywhere. Some, Mimi said, her voice full of false confidence. My last boyfriend is a quarterback at Georgia State, she added. Though last implied there had been others. And really Jamal was her first and only boyfriend. He got a football scholarship. Really? Vanessa was intrigued by celebrity even at the college level. You think he'll go pro? I don't care, Mimi sniffed like Vanessa was always doing. It's over with us. She was relieved to see Lena heading toward their table because she didn't want to go into a discussion about that jackass Jamal. With her phrase seven for all mankind denim mini, Lena had on a fitted gray t-shirt with a color photo of a very young Grandmaster Flash bending over a turntable with the words "Yes, yes, y'all" written underneath in bubble letters. Her red and white 1988 high top Air Jordans were purchased at Premium Goods in Brooklyn, a store that trafficked in hard to find classic kicks. The price for such footwear began at 300. While she was out in BK, she had a four-finger gold ring that spelled Lena made. A picture or column mention of Lena's having this old school moment would no doubt wind up in some magazine, and she would no doubt whine about how annoying it was that everyone else would then bite her style. But truth was, that was the very reason she'd gone through all the trouble. From her shoulder, she pulled down a late 80s ghetto blaster. She gotten it on eBay, put it on a table, and turned around. Look what crazy got me. It looked like she had Vaseline smeared all over her lower back. Mimi leaned in, and Vanessa picked up the candle on the table for illumination. Underneath the ointment, they could make out the word crazy. A few inches above Lena's ass, in inch high gothic leathers. Mimi and Vanessa exchanged horrified glances. "Oh girl, you tripping," Mimi whooped. "Loca is right," Vanessa cried about the tattoo in the outfit. She would never consider getting a tattoo anywhere on her body. Why tamper with perfection? "Hush," Lena said gaily. "You know it's hot." "So it's official, I guess," Mimi murmured disapprovingly. She hadn't seen Lena in a week because Crazy G was in town. Mimi was concerned because Lena told her she'd flown him in, which Mimi took to mean she paid for his plane ticket. And since she couldn't have guys stay at her huge place, or Henrietta, the housekeeper, would report it back to her father, they'd been holed up in the W Hotel on Union Square, doing the nasty non-stop. Mimi was sure Lena had paid for the room. Yes, Lena swooned, in too much of a tizzy to catch Mimi's disapproving tone. "We're in love." "Did he get a tattoo of your name?" Vanessa ventured. "No, but I got him a necklace from Jacob's," Lena said, as if accepting an expensive gift from her was somehow an expression of his love. Though she was still trying to cut down on the boozing, she ordered a shot of tequila. She was so happy she had to celebrate. She'd just have one or two. "Oh, from Jacob's? You're really balling now," Vanessa droned sarcastically. She thought the trinkets that all the rappers bought from the Diamond District gym merchant known as Jacob the jeweler were ridiculously tacky. Alonzo had explicit instructions never to buy her anything there. "Balling for real," Lena carped back, reveling in the fun of offending Vanessa. 15 G's. Mimi was lost. Who was Jacob? "You spent $15,000 on that nobody," Vanessa wailed, truly concerned now. Lena felt like she'd been slapped. Vanessa was calling her nigga a nobody? Who was on the verge of being signed by a major label, and she was going to be right there by his side when it happened. Lena need Jesus. That girl is lost. Ooh, see, it don't matter. It don't matter what kind of family you have, whether you come from, professional, intellectual parents. That don't mean you gonna have sense. This girl spent 15 G's on a dude who probably laid up with another girl as they were speaking. Let's go on. He's a great lyricist, Nessa, Lena explained, pulling on her gold door knocker earrings, which she could tell were already infecting her holes. He's about to blow up, kaboom, and you can't get much for 15 G's. It was tiny. The waitress brought the tequila shot, and Lena took it from her hand and knocked it back without ever letting the glass touch the table. And you know, didn't they say that Jacob the jeweler was selling fake stuff? You see how they get black folks? You be thinking they respecting you and admire you, and they just be targeting you because they think you stupid. Okay. Wait, back it up, Mimi interjected. You spent $15,000 on a necklace for Crazy G? Lena shrugged as if it were nothing. What's your father gonna say? Mimi said in a grave whisper. Vanessa had told her that Lena's father was some big-time lawyer and he despised rappers and the rap music like Lamont. Most of all, he hated that his Park Avenue reared daughter was so obsessed with all three. Mimi wondered what he'd think if he learned Lena was dating a thuggish rapper named Crazy G who practically had a bottle of Hennessy glued to his hand. He won't know, Lena said in her best I can do whatever the F I want voice. Daddy's accountant would notice, but I'll tell him Jacob is a clothing store. Mimi smelled the distant odor of trouble, but she decided to leave it alone. Mustafa returned to the table from the bar, where he had been chatting up a friend. He sat next to Vanessa, who immediately announced, Lena has gone loco. Mustafa wasn't sure why this was news. Wasn't she always? Lena heaved her butt onto the table and peeled back the waist of her mini so he could get a good look. It's still healing. He leaned close, inspected the tattoo, and threw his hands in the air ecstatically. Oh, Bobby, he squealed. It's so hot. Lena scooted off the table, turned on her boombox, which started blasting LL Cool J's Rock the Bells, pulled her fuzzy red Kango down low, and busted out doing the wop until everyone lapsed into hysterics. Yeah, I don't know if I would even be able to stomach somebody like Lena. I definitely wouldn't be calling her no friend. You wouldn't even be an associate, because I wouldn't be able to tolerate it. I mean, people can live their lives, but some stuff, it's like watching a train wreck. I just can't do it. Girl, live your life, but I don't want to be around. That was chapter 18. That was chapter 17. It just keep getting worse and worse, huh? I think I'm going to end because those chapters that I just read were kind of long. Folks, thank you for your time and attention. Thank you so much for your appreciation. Thank you for sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you so much. And I will see you guys in the next installment. Take care.